世界香港大家好，依家去到凌晨12:12啦。咁收睇緊嘅係 Action World 世界頻道同埋 Facebook 直播嘅。咁請嚟嘅互動嘉賓咧就係有 Mark Clifford 喺度。Mark Clifford 係蘋果日報嘅前董事。咁今日咧一開始嘅時候咧，我哋會講下有篇 Wall Street Journal Editorial Board 裏邊一篇文章啦。佢就係講 Jimmy Lai won't get his lawyer。咁我就想問下阿 Mark 一啲嘅建議啦，咁同埋佢哋嘅組織喺2023年咧有啲咩嘅行動啦嚇，所謂。Mark, it's good to see you after 1.5 months. Just not too long ago, we light a candle for Jimmy Lai.
Yeah. Thank you for your support. Great to see you, Ed, and thanks to everybody's prayers and work on behalf of Jimmy Lai and the hundreds of other political prisoners in Hong Kong.
Right. Now, you and I saw this editorial piece by Wall Street Journal from the editorial board. Jimmy Lai won't get his lawyer. And also they use some words that I don't like. I don't use quite often. Factotum, 打雜, right, is talking about John Lee, the current chief executive. This is like following orders from Beijing. So denotatively, 打雜 in English, what does that mean? Factotum.
Yeah, I mean, somebody that's following the orders of somebody else, somebody that's almost like a puppet, and certainly not somebody who's capable of thinking for himself. And this whole episode is, crazy, honestly. The basic law promises, which is the mini constitution guaranteeing Hong Kong, promises so many things. And believe it or not, it gets down to the specificity of promising that continued legal representation as before 1997 will be allowed. And that includes lawyers from overseas. And in Jimmy Lai's case, he wanted a barrister named Timothy Owen, based in London, a prominent human rights advocate, to defend him on the national security law charges. And what should have been a routine request was fought by the Hong Kong government. And they lost in court. They didn't lose once. They didn't lose twice. They didn't even lose 3 times. They lost 4 consecutive cases, including all the way to the Court of Final Appeal. And John Lee didn't really know what to do, I guess, and so he asked Beijing to help him out, to rewrite the rules. And in the end, Beijing, the National People's Congress Standing Committee, kind of kicked it back to Hong Kong and said the chief executive could decide whatever he wanted to decide in these national security law cases, which, again, shows just how weak the protections are, the legal protections in Hong Kong, and the way in which the rule of law is being subverted. Beijing just changes the rules whenever it doesn't like the outcome. The whole point of rule of law is that you can go to court, I can go to court, and we have a chance of winning based on the merits of the case. And that means that sometimes the government loses cases. It seems that this government can't lose a case. But again, step back a little. All he was asking was the right to have his own lawyer in court. There's still a very, very high likelihood, even if Tim Owen were there, that he would be convicted because Beijing wants Jimmy Lai to be convicted. So, I'm scratching my head. A lot of us are like, what is going on here? Why is John Lee so afraid of having a UK-based human rights lawyer advocating for Jimmy Lai in a court case where they've got a hand-picked judge? They don't have a jury trial, again, against the basic law. They stacked everything against the defendants. Why are they so worried about having, even the appearance of a fair trial? It really makes you wonder what is going on in Hong Kong.
So it said at President's that it seems like, getting not even a fair trial, but you need a certificate of sorts to be approved by John Lee and his team, right? So it's a special committee to decide case by case, to be granted.
Yeah, so you've got these guys are basically the judge, jury, and the executioner. Let's remember, it was John Lee, when he was Secretary for Security, who sent a letter to Jimmy Lai freezing his assets, depriving him of his ownership rights, his property rights in a publicly listed company, Next Digital, which published Apple Daily. It was John Lee who sent us, the board of directors at Next Digital, a letter freezing freezing 3 key bank accounts and forcing us to shut down the newspaper and the whole media empire, costing almost 1,000 jobs, and of course, costing Hong Kong Apple Daily. This is John Lee. He just did it because he said he had, quote, reason to believe. So forget about trying to prove anything in court, let alone prove something to convince a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that a company or a person's guilty of national security law charges. It's just John Lee or whoever saying, yeah, I don't like this, so I'm just going to outlaw it. I'm going to shut this company. I'm going to throw you in jail. I mean, this is pathetic. It has nothing to do with rule of law.
Well, moving forward with people like John Lee, puppet, or the other word that I know, factotum, right? Factotum, 打雜, right? This word. I mean, it's kind of sad to see this downward spiral of Hong Kong, because you talk about the rule of law is not intact, and then businesses, they are moving out. I mean, Asian headquarters, if people have a choice, they will choose Singapore, where common law is practiced. But moving forward, even though John Lee talks about Hong Kong is back, right? They just had this leader forum 3 months ago, but it seems like that people don't budge.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this whole Hong Kong back narrative is, I think, very dangerous, very insidious, and we need to be vigilant about it. They're sending musicians, a dance troupe is coming to New York. They're sending people around the world to say Hong Kong is back. They want us to forget. Again, this is the Chinese Communist Party's kind of amnesia. They do really bad things, and then they try to airbrush that bit of history away. And they did this obviously with June 4th, 1989, and now they're doing it with this remarkable pro-democracy upsurge in 2019. I mean, let's not forget, we had 2 million or more people on a single day out in the streets repeatedly. Hong Kong people want democracy. We all know that. And we know that John Lee and Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party want the world to forget about that. They want to put people in jail. They want to keep these hundreds of political prisoners in jail, and yet they want to tell the outside world that everything's normal and the COVID restrictions are gone, Hong Kong is back. Well, I mean, if Hong Kong is back, let's see some protests on the street. Let's see June 4th memorials. Let's see political prisoners being let out. If Hong Kong is back, let's see the basic law really implemented. I mean, the basic law is a remarkable document in terms of what it promises in terms of religious freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of press, as I said, jury trial. All these things are being swept away. Hong Kong isn't back. Hong Kong is being destroyed by the likes of John Lee and the people around him who are working at the behest of Beijing and at the behest of Xi Jinping. This is not John Lee sort of going off and freelancing, doing his own thing against the wishes of the central leader. However, this incident with Jimmy Lai and his lawyer, I think it looks to me like Beijing is really kind of confused about what to do. The fact that the National People's Congress did not make a decision in the past, the handful of cases where the chief executive has asked for a ruling, or has basically asked for Beijing's help, the National People's Congress has laid down the law. And in this case, they just kicked it back to Hong Kong to deal with. So I don't know, interesting time, obviously interesting times in China right now as they grapple with this, this tragic and I think largely avoidable COVID wave that's probably on the way to killing over 1 million people. I mean, just tragic.
Yeah, and then I heard like in Shanghai, 70% of the people, the population got infected. 70%. Yeah. Huge number. Mm-hmm.
And as we know, I mean, crematoriums are overflowing. They can't bury the bodies fast enough. And yet China has, said like just a handful of people have died. I mean, as usual, they're lying and covering up. But, they've got a lot of issues to deal with in China right now. And I don't know that the confusion in Hong Kong is making it any easier for them. So let's see. And let's see if that provides an opening for pro-democracy forces in Hong Kong.
Now, I want to ask about your group. You represent a group. It's a long name, and I don't want to say it wrong. Can you repeat again?
Yeah, it's the Committee for Freedom in Hong Kong Foundation, and we're a U.S.-based group that lobbies on, particularly tries to keep the issue of Hong Kong political prisoners front and center above all with governments in well, around the world, but we have offices in London and in Washington D.C. We're very involved there, and we want to ensure that Hong Kong, the plight of people who are unjustly imprisoned in Hong Kong, is remembered and is spotlighted around the world. And of course, we want Hong Kong and all the people in Hong Kong who are fighting for freedom and democracy to be remembered, to let them know that they're not forgotten, that they're not alone.
Are there any plans for the next 2 quarters? Any activities in the U.S.?
Yeah, so in late January, we're announcing a policy roadmap where we're working with legislators and other people in D.C. to be looking at concrete legislative and other measures we can take, including sanctions against prosecutors and judges and other people directly involved with carrying out the national security law. And we have some other non-legislative research reports coming up where we hope to keep the pressure on the Hong Kong government and on the Hong Kong financial system.
I don't see any groups who is targeting the judges yet, the NSL judges, right? You're talking about.
Well, I think there actually has been work done by other activists and people like Stand with Hong Kong, Hong Kong Watch. And others have been working on this.
Prosecutors, but not on the judges.
Yeah. Okay, you're correct. They've worked on prosecutors, and I think that there are some people who are working on judges, but we intend to be among them.
Yeah, that would be a big development if you move forward into that direction.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of which, I think there's going to be renewed pressure among the activist community to target the 10 remaining foreign judges who are non-permanent judges on the Court of Final Appeal. So think about this. This is kind of like the Supreme Court in the U.S., and it has rotated, except it doesn't have just 9 people. It has some rotating foreign judges. 2 British judges last year, who were sitting British judges, resigned because they didn't feel that what was happening in Hong Kong was consonant with their duties, their responsibilities, and their commitment to rule of law, particularly back home in the UK. But there still are, as I said, these 10 from Australia, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And I think there's going to be renewed pressure on them to step down because, again, this latest decision with the Court of Final Appeal being ignored by the National People's Congress and the illegal, bad as the national security law was, the fact that the government would just overturn its own law to make it even more favorable to the government, again, I think has to give the lie to, anyone who believes in a rule of law in Hong Kong. And I think it's just, just unbecoming of these distinguished international jurists to be sitting on Hong Kong's Court of Final Appeal. So I think there's going to be more pressure from activists on these 10 individuals.
Now, I want to ask you one thing. John Lee is talking about going to a business trip, I think APEC or something, because he is currently still being sanctioned by the former U.S. government for basically jeopardizing Hong Kong's autonomy together with the former chief executive and all that. Do you think he can easily go into the U.S.?
Well, I think what you're referring to in particular is the APEC meeting, which is set for November in San Francisco. He in fact was sanctioned by the previous U.S. administration. He continues to be sanctioned because the U.S. government, of course, continues from administration to administration. Those sanctions remain in place. I think it would be very difficult for John Lee to come to San Francisco. I can't speak for the U.S. State Department. It would seem to me that making a special exemption for him would be, to invite a lot of political blowback. And we'll see. It's November. It's a long way off. But he said that he wants to come. I don't know what he's thinking. But they seem to be saying a lot of crazy things in Hong Kong. I mean, CY Leung is complaining. They're complaining about Google. Yes. They don't like, the way Google search results come up on the national anthem in Hong Kong, et cetera, et cetera. So, and in a way, these guys, I feel like they're kind of tilting at windmills. I mean, they're saying these things that are really, I think they're really designed to please their boss in Beijing. They don't really have anything to do with reality. So, but the thing is, then it makes John Lee look foolish if he says he intends to go to San Francisco, and he's basically prohibited from entering the U.S. because he's a human rights violator. Well, that doesn't make him look too good. It just highlights the whole issue. He should just like kind of be quiet and stay home.
I find it honestly, Mark, beyond ridiculous to see these human rights violators. They're all running Hong Kong. I mean, the key positions, him and also the chief of security. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's beyond, it's tragic too. I mean, you think of, we've talked about this, Ed, but I think it's worth repeating. I mean, you had one of the freest, most open societies in the world. In the space of a couple of years, it's been shattered beyond recognition. I mean, that took a lot of work, and it was people like John Lee and the people around him who did that work on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party. It was a tough job. I'm sure they congratulate themselves. It's really hard to snuff out 7.5 million freedom-loving people, to snuff out the desire for freedom. And I don't think they have snuffed it out, and they know that. And that's why they continue to crack down. That's why they continue to hold hundreds of people, non-violent political activists, in prison, because they're afraid of the people of Hong Kong. We got to remember that. They are afraid.
Now, Xiaobo Long, I think he is the head, not of the liaison office, but the other department. He targeted 3 individuals, Jimmy Lai, Benny Tai, and Joshua Wong. He says that he wants to see them in prison for a long, long time, right? Said something like that. And I'm kind of got concern of Jimmy. He is 75 years old. And recently, I went to the funeral of one of the columnists of Apple Daily in Calgary, Li Yi. I got Jimmy's sketching. He did some sketching inside prison. So he is very good in drawing Jesus on the cross being crucified and all that. So I find there's a lot of inner peace inside of Jimmy. But, with things going like the rate it is now, there's a possibility that Jimmy could die in prison, right? If justice is not served. I mean, with this totalitarian regime.
Look, I mean, let's remember, he's in solitary confinement in a maximum security prison. Every time they take him to a court appearance, they wake him up early. They put 30, 35 pounds of chains on him, manacles, designed to humiliate him. This man is not a danger to society. In fact, he's a huge benefit to Hong Kong, right? I mean, he's fighting for freedom. My understanding, I'm not in direct contact with him, is that, he is at peace. I mean, he's been preparing for this time. He's a Catholic convert. He converted just at the time of the handover. And he's been readying himself for this battle. And I mean, he really is 1 in a billion. I mean, he turned his back. I mean, he sold his Giordano retail chain so that he could focus on media, because the Chinese wanted to get him through his company. He didn't run away. He has a British passport. I mean, he could have left, and he's decided to bear witness. I mean, in the most elemental way possible, right? I mean, he's sacrificing his body, his life, really, but his freedom, his physical freedom, for the people of Hong Kong. But as you say, Ed, I mean, my understanding is that he feels like he has spiritual freedom. He talked to a lot of people about the whole issue of being a political prisoner and how to get ready for that. And I think it was Nathan Sharansky who told him, you live as they can cage your body, they can confine your body, but if you decide you're going to live as a free man, you're free. And I think that's what disturbs people like Xiaobo Long and other Chinese communists, is that he actually has principles. He has morality. He has something he believes in. As you say, he's become a wonderful artist. His drawings of Christ on the cross are remarkable. But above all, he has inner peace, and he continues to study. I'm told he's asking for books on classical Christian writers, by classical Christian writers. I mean, he continues to deepen and purify himself spiritually. I mean, it's again, it's remarkable, because you say he's 75 years old, and he's physically confined. I think it's it's hard on everybody. I mean, of course, I think he'd like to be out of prison. I mean, I'm sure hundreds of other Hong Kong political prisoners will be, and that's why I think it's so important that we continue to pray for them. We continue to work for them, and it's a combination of prayer and actual action. And also, Jimmy is not a victim. He's not a passive person. None of us are, but even he in his prison cell is not. And we have to keep fighting. We have to be aggressive, not just kind of parry the blows from the Chinese Communist Party, but to take direct action where we can.
And I think we could stop here. I could hear your cat is meowing. Yeah. So good timing.
Anyway, thanks as always. Thanks for your prayers and for all your work. And we'll catch up next time. Yes,
and we'll have actually an exhibition from January 9th, next Monday, till the 20th at the U of Toronto Charles Lee Library, which is on the 8th floor inside Robarts Library. And then there will be a sharing session on the 14th on Saturday. If you do happen to come to Toronto, come over. We'll have a joint session.
Hope to see you there.
Yeah. Let me stop the broadcast now and talk to you more. God bless.